evening. Welcome to the October 22nd, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting. Tonight's meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. As a preliminary matter, I'm going to confirm that all members of the board are present and can hear me. I'm Bob Springett, Chair of the committee. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. John Jeffries.
John Jeffries here.
Robin Hunter.
Present.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Chris Dwelly.
Present.
Dave Sullivan.
Present.
Mona DeCilio.
Here.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Carol Lisbon.
Here.
Representative Denise Garlick.
Here.
Okay. And we are off to the races. Citizen comments.
Is that me?
Oh.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the Dover Recycling Committee, I just wanted to thank the citizens that took advantage of our special recycling weekend last weekend. It was a great success. There were people lined up at 8:15 in the morning waiting for the shredder truck, which came and got totally full. And that was donated by Dover Country Properties, which does this twice a year for us. Dover Mobile takes the tires. We had over 100 tires delivered to the transfer station. This is an item that we don't normally take the rest of the year. And Bikes Not Bombs, a wonderful nonprofit that takes used bikes, cleans them up and sends them all over the world to those in need, was ecstatic. They got probably 40 or 50 bikes, some that looked brand new. So it was a wonderful day for Bikes Not Bombs. And we've been trying for years to work this out, and we finally got them to come. New Life Furniture Bank, which is a nonprofit in Walpole that works to put together apartments for homeless folks using various social agencies in Metro West, came, and they were able to take 15 pieces of furniture that we had, that was either delivered that day by folks or that Wade and Bill had stockpiled based upon the criteria that New Life had given us. They only take very certain things, especially now with COVID, they're even more limited, and they have to take things in perfect condition. So they were very pleased. We were very pleased. We probably kept, probably 800 to 1,000 pounds of perfectly good furniture out of the trash. So we're hoping that that relationship will continue. They usually, when people ask them to come to their homes to pick stuff up, they usually ask for a donation, being a nonprofit. But I've been told by our town accountant that we can't as a municipality pay a nonprofit. So that's an issue going forward, since it does save us money as well as being good for the environment. So something I'd like to explore a little bit more. But right now, at least, they did come. We had a very successful day with them. They were pleased. And I know that those who donated furniture were pleased that their lovely stuff was going to a good cause rather than to a trash bin. So thank you very much. And thank you to all the citizens who participated.
Well, that's just terrific. That's just a great way to help others. And people should feel very good about that.
And I think a special thank you to the recycling committee for organizing it.
Well, thank you. And I'm remiss in not thanking Bob Tosi, Wade, and Bill for their efforts at the transfer station to help us out. They were great.
Carol, can you give us the name again of the nonprofit, and maybe that's something we could post on our the town's website, and make that known to people who would be inclined to make a donation.
Yeah, I don't know if you're all aware, but there's a new Dover group on Facebook called Sustainable Living Dover, which has about 70 members right now. I expect it to increase. So we're using, the recycling committee is using Sustainable Living Dover Facebook page as well to publicize our stuff. And the founder of that Facebook page will be before you to appoint to the recycling committee. So hopefully there'll be a lot of synergy there, but it's New Life Furniture Bank. in Walpole. And you need to put in the furniture bank, because if you put in New Life, you're going to get a whole bunch of churches all over the country. A wonderful organization. I know that lots and lots and lots of folks in Dover have used it as they've been moving or had to close up houses and whatever. It's only about, it's on the Dover side of Walpole. It's about a 12, 15-minute drive. Or they'll come and pick up.
Good
That's
to
great.
know.
Thank you for asking, John.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you. I'm going to move on to item 1.1. Representative Denise Garlick, Vice Chair of Ways and Means, is going to give us an update on the state of the state's financial plan, I guess. Denise, you're up.
Thank you,
Thank
Bob.
you for coming.
My pleasure always. Good evening to everyone. I actually asked Bob to add that little caveat that I am the Vice Chair of Ways and Means. Because of that position, I felt very responsible to report back to my towns on where we are in the process with the budget. And I think that Chris Dwelly may have the slides now, Chris.
Yeah, if you want to continue with an introduction, Denise, if you wouldn't mind, Dave's going to get the slides set up for you and you'll see them up on the screen in a moment.
That's perfect. Thank you, Dave, as well. So I wanted to let you know where we were presently in the budget process. As you may know, many people know that in December, we meet with an economic roundtable with economists from all over the Commonwealth that have different perspectives on the budget. And we have a projection of revenue. And then the legislature and the governor, the executive branch, come up with a consensus revenue number. And that's how we proceed to build the budget. We did that in December. We did that again, unprecedented again in March. And I want you to know that we just did the economic roundtable again 2 weeks ago and have a number for our revenue, which is a 3.4% agreement on the consensus revenue. And Dave, if we could just go to that first slide. So one of the things that means for us is when we're talking about the economic indicators, and I'm going, yep, there we go. So when we talk about the economic indicators right now, this is news as of September of the numbers we have. We've had a 13.4% decline in the GDP. The unemployment rate in September, you might recall that Massachusetts had the highest unemployment rate in the nation several months ago, topping out a little bit over 16%. We're now at 9.6%. And we've had an estimated decline in the state revenue from the budget we had projected of $3.6 billion. For the people who have been carefully watching the economics of the Commonwealth, you might remember the recession in 2008. That recession had a devastating impact on the Commonwealth. And we saw a cut in state agencies. We saw the impacts from that, and that was a $2 billion deficit. So we're really grappling with something here. What we're doing and why I wanted to report to you on that next slide, Dave, is we are presently, the legislature is living in 3 fiscal years at once. And what I mean by that is we are currently closing out the fiscal 20 year. We have to close that out completely. At the same time, we are now writing the FY21 budget. Now that traditionally would have been due July 1st, but there was a great deal of wisdom in kind of pushing that off as far as the state was concerned, because in July of 2020, we believe the deficit was $6.5 billion. So we kind of held on there. We waited to see what was happening with the virus. We waited to see what the economic impact was. And we started putting out these month-to-month budgets. And in that time, we've seen more stabilization and arrived at this $3.5 billion budget. The patience so much on our waiting on the federal government did not actually pay out. We were hoping very much that we would see not only that first package of support for the state municipalities, but that we would see a second one before we had to write the final budget. But that still is not forthcoming, as you all know. And at the same time, I am expecting, we are very aspirational in believing the governor would like us to have the budget that we received 2 weeks ago from him through the House, through the Senate, and conference by Thanksgiving. I think that's a tight timeline, but I think it is everyone's projected goal. And I suspect in the beginning of December that we'll see the FY21 budget. At that time, immediately, we will begin the work on planning for FY22. And that is the budget. You'll then see the governor come out with a budget in January. The House traditionally comes out with a budget the week after April school vacation. The Senate comes out with a budget the week before Memorial Day, and it's conference and hopefully on the table by June 30th, as we begin the new year. I am sharing with people, as I'm sure the town is also approaching how they're going to think about FY22. This is presently, the feeling around this is very grim about what kind of shape we're going to be in for FY22. I'll tell you what we're doing for FY21 and what plan we have for that. And as you're looking at this, in order for us to come out with these budgets with a deficit of $3.5 billion, there's three things you can do. You can cut services. You can go to the stabilization fund. And interestingly enough, there's $3.5 billion in the stabilization fund. Massachusetts has the strongest stabilization fund of any state in the country for the number of people of our population. Or you can begin to raise revenue. I want you to know that at this time, and particularly with the governor's budget, we are not looking at cuts. The whole goal is to keep the Commonwealth stable and to sustain services. And we are not looking at revenue at this point in time, with great sensitivity to the many needs of the constituents of our Commonwealth. So if we go to that next slide, this actually is probably what hits home the hardest for Dover, and I'm hoping is the best news. The Board of Selectmen allowed me to come in, gave me the opportunity to come and speak to you right after, was kind of as we were coming into the May and June time. At that point, the legislature had promised to hold steady local aid and to hold steady the Chapter 70 money. And so on this side, you'll see the FY20 budget and the FY21. We have kept that promise. We will keep that promise. And I think that is one of the most important things that Dover needs to know going forward. And for anyone who may not be familiar with the Chapter 70, that's our education money. And so that's the money that comes in for Chickering as well as for the Dover-Sherburne school system. And on the next slide, you'll see the governor. So we're calling this budget now that we're looking at the revised FY21 budget. And it's revised on the recommendations he had made in January. The Joint Committee on Ways and Means held a public hearing on Tuesday on this budget. One of the key figures is that it's $45.5 billion in this budget. That might sound counterintuitive to anyone who remembers that the original FY21 budget was for $43 billion. The reason this number is increased is actually related to the Mass Health numbers that we have a federal reimbursement for. So by the time we get to November of this year, we've spent so much money on Mass Health and we're getting the federal reimbursement. So it's like an inflated number, but it's actually reflecting that Mass Health number. And the governor, at the governor's suggestion, we are drawing $1.35 billion from the stabilization. So 3.5 sitting there, we're drawing down 1.35 to stabilize the Commonwealth. The House now, I am presently engaged, attended the public meeting, and actually want to share with you in the last 2 weeks, the chair and I have met with all 160 members of the House of Representatives and shared the news as we know it and shared discussions about where our goals were and how it was we were going to move together on the budget. So the next slide will give you a sense of the major areas of the budget concern, you know, nearly, I'm gonna trip on this because a person got it wrong the other day and now I'm gonna stick with the wrong number, but close to 50% of our budget is in the Health and Human Services budget for the Commonwealth. And so these areas that you see around healthcare access and mental health and substance use, the domestic violence, these issues are housed in the Health and Human Services budget. But these are the issues that have been exacerbated through the whole COVID-19 virus time. So we're looking at those as a major concern. And you might know that I also concentrate very much on the issues related to DDS and to the Department of Children and Families as well. On the next slide, I'm going to hop through this quickly because we have had a chance, and if you want to ask me questions about this, I would be more than welcome. But when I had talked to you in the summertime, we had talked about some of the kind of things that were pending. You know that the eviction and foreclosure moratorium has ended, and there is a program on eviction resilience. In my opinion, it's funded with $100 million. And then there's other monies for courts and legal to support both the tenants and the landlords. It's very difficult to understand what the projection was on that, how many people they think they can serve and for how long they can serve them. So I'm concerned about the money we're going to need for that. The healthcare resiliency is really what we've learned in this whole time around telehealth. As a nurse for years and years and years, I would never have told you that telehealth was equal to or better than one-to-one interactions, but we've actually seen a great strength with it, particularly around behavioral health and mental health issues. You know, the law enforcement reform bill is pending in conference committee. We did a lot of work on voting rights and election security, which is how the town of Dover can vote by mail and can vote early and just vote. And the accountability for vulnerable children and families is actually a bill that I'm the author for, and we are negotiating that final bill now with great concern for the children of the Commonwealth. 51As are reports of abuse and neglect. In this COVID-19 time, the 51As have dropped by 50%. It is not because our children are safer, it's because our children are not being seen. And so I'm working diligently on that. And we continue to work on the clean energy bills. The next slide is on legislative flexibility. And we had discussed this early on around what we were doing initially at the time of the, as we were first beginning to deal with COVID-19. And I know I had a chance to talk to you about the things we were trying to do in the legislature for the towns and the residents. And I want you to know, I think at that time, I told you that I was sponsor of the SAFE Act, which is a state plan for public health excellence, very important. In what we've seen, the town of Dover and your Board of Health take on responsibility in this COVID-19 time. And I continue to work to strengthen and bring resources to our local boards of health. And then in our next slide, we'll talk about the future concerns around flexibility. And there's one of the things when I met with the Needham Finance Committee, which is the equivalent of Dover's Warrant Committee, they were talking about potential flexibilities that could help, that didn't necessarily mean more resources, but could help in the way that we could approach our budgets. It's like the work we did around trying to figure out how we could have town meeting. And I just wanted to put this out there that I am open to any suggestions that you might have as the Board of Selectmen or the town accountant, and always what the town administrator would say if there's suggestions. We're actively writing the budget now, so if anyone has a brilliant idea, if you could get it to me as soon as possible. And I still have a bill pending around school operational efficiency, and it is the all-time nerd bill, but it's just about if we can just tweak things a little bit, if we could make it easier for the way we do some of the purchasing in the schools or the way we manage those budgets, that without adding extra money, we might be able to allow the schools to better use their resources. And I worked with all 3 superintendents in the towns that I represent, including, of course, Andy Keough on this. And then the last thing I just wanted to get on your radar screen is on the next slide, is the intersection of the state and federal support. The CARES Act, the town of Dover received $537,911 from the Corona Relief Fund formula. I'm very interested, and will circle back to all of you if you've been able to mobilize that money. When that money first came out, there was so many strings attached to it. It was very difficult to figure out how to utilize that. But on December 30th of this year, that money will no longer be available. So I'm very interested in knowing how Dover is doing with that, and seeing if Medfield still has money on the table. I haven't checked with Needham on this particular issue. And if Dover has any concerns about mobilizing that money, we'll call an emergency meeting and get someone at the state level to make sure that we know how to use this, because my understanding is that the strings that were attached have been loosened over time. I'm just not sure if everybody's got that information. The Dover and Dover-Sherburne Public Schools received $447,000 through the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund and the reopening grants. And here it is again, the Federal CARES Act funds must be spent by December 31st. And actually, interesting, I've got a mistake here. It's actually by December 30th, which is so odd. And I only learned that yesterday. I don't know why it doesn't go to the end of the year, but it only goes to the 30th. The school nutrition waivers have made a great deal of difference. As many people have, there have been many concerns about how the statesmen and municipalities have gotten support from the federal government. But I want you to know one of the real stand-up agencies has been the USDA, and the issues around food security are immense. And I tell you, even as we are speaking to each other tonight, there are people in Dover who are worried about food and you know, how to plan for that and how to allocate their resources for that. And the issue around unemployment insurance, the extra $600 of unemployment insurance benefit has expired. This makes a major difference. I would tell you that in the months since the virus, every single day, my office has dealt with unemployment issues for the people of Needham, Dover, and Medfield. It has been a constant source of anxiety for people. And some of the systems were easy to get through, and some of the systems not so easy. But losing that $600 unemployment benefit, I think, has a great impact on the towns that I represent, where many people are trying to manage large mortgages. And every single one of these dollars makes a difference. And the issue here around the executive order authorizing the additional $300 a week for 3 weeks, that just used FEMA funds. The other thing that we're witnessing right now is there's a big shift in the federal government where a lot of money is being put into these FEMA funds. And there is a concern about the strain on FEMA itself when we have unpredictability around how long the virus will last and how great our needs are. And so the big question is, will there be federal aid for the states or not? That's going to make a huge impact on the FY22 and how we move forward. So then the last and final thing that I wanted to share with you, this actually is a little bit of a commercial. I am putting out a press. You may know that in the beginning of the virus, from March through July, every single day I put out a report trying to consolidate the information we were getting from so many different sources. And we're presently doing it on Mondays and Thursdays now. And anything that's important to the community that you'd like to have in that report, let me know. I was thinking as Carol was talking, I don't think we had the Dover recycling days in the report, and that was exactly the kind of thing that I would want to share with people. But having said that, as we look to the FY22 budget, we will still have money in that stabilization fund, and we will have, as we start to build that, we will have a better sense of where we are with the virus, with our economy, and how to move forward on that. The watchword for the Commonwealth right now is, this is my own concept of what we're trying to deal with. We are dealing with an acute issue, but it's prolonged, right? But it's not a chronic issue. This isn't a forever issue. This is an acute, prolonged issue. And my goal as your representative, and what I've heard echoed by many other people, is we are trying to keep the Commonwealth stable, and we are trying to sustain services. And that becomes one of those things, is not all services are being utilized. So when we look at DDS, the Department of Developmental Services, not all of those individuals are in the day programs because we have restrictions on how many people can be there and how that can be done. But we have to sustain those programs, because the day is going to come when people are going to be able to go those programs, and we need them to be there. And that's replicated all throughout, particularly the HHS budget, with early intervention, with mental health services, with the workplace and employment services, and how we're going to be able to be ready, and keep the Commonwealth strong. So that's where we are now. I certainly don't want to take extra time on your agenda when you're all working so hard, but I can try to ask any question you have, answer. I got a million questions, but I'm afraid I don't have a million answers. But if I can answer anything for you now, or try and get that information for you, I will.
Denise, thanks very much. That was a really clear presentation. It was straightforward and very easy to follow. And very much appreciate all the work that's going on in Boston. It is complex, it is acute, and it is extended. And we all need to, this is a marathon right now. We just need to continue, doing what you suggest, doing the work necessary to stabilize the Commonwealth, stabilize the town, limit damage, keep people safe. It's those are the important things. I'm going to ask John and Robin if they have any questions for Denise.
So Denise, thank you, first and foremost. I've said this to you before, and I've said it publicly, and even though I'm actually on the screen, I'm sandwiched between two of my favorite Democrats, you and Carol Lisbon, which is a bit scary and a bit rewarding at the same time. You know that I love you both, but one of the things I told you that I was very impressed with, and as the vice chair, what your committee has done a great job with this, and your preparation speaks to it, Denise, is that there's no partisan politics in this, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It really is impressive, and I can speak for my people, and I say that with tongue in cheek, but as it really is impressive. Congratulations on that. And that just in itself, in the state that we're in sort of this environment that we're in, where you've just done a great job of that part of it. So congratulations on that. I just have one quick question to ask you, and it speaks to everything that you've talked about, and how this whole process is been both reported, which you alluded to in your Tuesday and Thursday on the dashboard that you send, the Garlick press that you send to us, which I really like, and it's very well done. When you look at the dashboard, one of the things that's buried deep in the dashboard is the survivability, and how the survivability of COVID has been increased every single month. And what has been a stark contrast to me, Denise, is that the death rate and the death percentage from COVID has dropped every single month. And it is really highly concentrated in the 70 plus community. And it really is centered around the average age of the COVID death is 83 years old, where the average age of mortality in Massachusetts is 77. So people who are dying of COVID are 6 years older than the average person who dies in Massachusetts. And yet, one of the things that you're struggling with, and one of the things that we're struggling with, is schools. So children who have the lowest rate of contraction of the virus are really affected, and our services and our money is really affected by not providing the same educational services that we should be providing to that group, the kids under age 20. So what do you see in this immediate future that we're going to do to change the way we're spending a whole lot more money than quite possibly we should be for that cohort?
So John, if you'll forgive me for this, I'm going to dust off my nurse's cap for a minute for you. So the thing that I'd like to share with you is that when we talk about children and we're talking about individuals, as you're calling them, less than 20 years old, I think there's actually subsections of that. And the research is beginning to show us that very young children, for physiological reasons, carry less of the virus. But they're saying from the age of about 10, 11 onward, that they can carry the same viral load. But to your point, likely very asymptomatic. But the danger is they are the asymptomatic carrier. So I think for the people that are looking at these public health impacts, there's a real concern presently. What we're seeing in the Commonwealth now, as you're watching these numbers rise, I mean, today we almost had 1,000 positive cases today, right? Whereas we're seeing these numbers rise, my understanding is that they're talking about community spread now with these asymptomatic carriers, and it is younger people, John. It's these hockey players. There's real concern about indoor hockey and how that's happening. And you're seeing it in small groups. And because our contact tracing is getting better, it's getting easier to see, you know, the family that had the backyard barbecue with people that they know well and felt like they were handling things in the same way they were, but we're seeing community spread there. And that's where we're seeing it really primarily. You know, in the beginning, we were seeing it in the nursing homes, and we were seeing these high numbers in the nursing homes and with these really vulnerable populations. But now we're seeing the spread is much more in the community and around the community. So that's one piece that's concerning. To Bob's point about the number of people, although we have many, many people who have the virus, we're seeing the death rate decrease is to the amazing growth in our knowledge around the virus and our ability to care for people with the viruses. You know, it's just like when we hear this talk about a vaccine, right? On average, it takes almost a decade to bring out a vaccine, right? That's really effective. We're watching this process really being accelerated. And it's because the science community worldwide is working together in a way that we've never seen before, because we're facing a worldwide pandemic. Worldwide, you know, it was a nurse in Italy who was the first person who decided to prone a patient, which is making them lie on their stomach, to give their lungs more room to expand. That is now an absolute principle of care and how we're caring for people. So we're getting much better at the care of individuals. We did all the work the people in the Commonwealth did around that flattening the curve. To flatten the curve wasn't going to kill the virus. It was going to protect our hospital's capacity to care for people who were so ill. And we did do that work, and Massachusetts needs to be very proud of itself for that work. So we were able to do that, but it didn't make the virus go away. And now we're entering this new and difficult time where people are going back indoors. The holidays are coming, and people are going to have to make a lot of very personal, very important decisions until we can just get a little bit further down the road. To Bob's point, we're not at mile 26 yet. I'm not even sure where on the marathon we are. I know there's an endpoint, but we've got to get ourselves there. And, you know, I think that this whole idea around community spread is now something we have to wrap our minds around in a new and different way. But I'm hopeful that this contact tracing and this testing is going to be one of our best tools moving forward. And Massachusetts is prepared to do that. I know there's glitches in the system and I kind of, I work on that a lot, but it is a very strong system in the Commonwealth. I think we can get better at it, and I think it's going to be our best tool.
Thank you. Robin?
I thought the presentation was very well done. I assume it's a working process, and that as new information becomes available, it will be updated. It was really helpful to me. I am cautiously optimistic. It was better than what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I'm also very cautious because I think, as you had mentioned before, we just don't know how long this is going to last. We do know it's not permanent. We just don't know how long it's going to impact us. So I appreciate you coming this evening and would really welcome any updates that you have available. So, as we begin to think about our budget, we're doing the same thing. We're making sure that we're agile and can adapt, but still planning for the future, because that's important as well. So thanks a lot, Denise.
My pleasure, Robin. And I want to thank Chris Dwelly. You've got a great town administrator on your hands, and he's steady at the same time that he's making sure that he understands what Dover needs. And I suspect Chris Dwelly knows things about state government that I am still trying to learn. And I think it will be a benefit to us moving forward.
Right.
So anytime and always with Chris Dwelly at a text message, whatever I can do.
Thanks.
Thank you again. So that was a handoff. So I'm going to put Chris Dwelly on the spot.
Whoa.
Chris, do you have any updates to Denise on the CARES sort of fund use for Dover?
Yeah, I do. So, as the representative mentioned, she and I have been in regular contact over the past few months related to the budget. So we spoke a few weeks ago about the CARES Act, and I commended the state through Denise for what I have experienced to be a good job in answering questions around eligibility on reimbursable expenses, as well as the quick turnaround that A&F has produced when we submitted our first reimbursement request. So from the state side, things have been wonderful. I do know for the second round that closes at the end of this month, the state's provided a little bit more clarity around some of those eligible expenses. One of which is around HVAC eligibility, which is a big one for the town of Dover. So that's very helpful for us as we determine how best to utilize and allocate these funds. So on the state side, things are great. I did make mention though, and I'll mention it again, if there's anything that the good representative can do to assist on the FEMA side with getting that reimbursement turned around more quickly, that would be wonderful. But I do understand that that's not a state issue. It's the way that the feds had set up the distribution of funds. But not a big deal. I figured I'd mention it. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank Denise for both the proactive check-ins and all the help and the time that she spent with me as I've had these complaints about FEMA timelines and things like that. She's always available and has been a gem to work with, especially during this period. So Dover is in a good place as it relates to CARES. I had it on my update under town administrator updates, but I guess I might as well just make mention of it now. So we submitted the first round around $80,000 worth of expenses. This was when we were gearing up in the spring. So a lot of this was focused around PPEs for our public safety and first responders, a lot of the cleaning supplies to make sure that our buildings were cleaned and safe, a lot of the barriers and separation that folks see in our public buildings now, as well as the technology that you see me on this evening. And so all these are really great things that we were able to purchase via the CARES Fund and keep business going. To date, we've had about an additional, since the first round, which closed, gosh, when was that? A few months ago, I believe. We've had about $40,000 of additional expenses. So with meeting with the finance team, we've issued guidance actually just this week to identify anticipated spend from now through December 30th, which is the eligibility period for expending the remaining balance of these funds. So we wanted to do that as a way to get a sense and be able to verify that these anticipated costs are eligible, and to start the accounting process and the request process to request these funds so that we don't lose them. And one of the big focus areas for the second round will be around the air quality improvements for the town buildings that have been identified via the air quality assessment reports that we did. So the timing truthfully couldn't have worked out better with this. And I'm happy that we've got these funds available to us so that we're able to mitigate and remediate some of the things that we've discovered through our analysis in town. So we're in a good place. And again, Denise, thank you certainly for all your help.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Denise, again, it's always a pleasure to have you here. You always give us just terrific, straightforward information. You keep us up to date. We all appreciate it very much. I know how hard it is. Somehow, but you're not probably traveling as much as you used to with Zoom remote technology. So, you know, another sort of silver lining in this, in the age of COVID. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
We love having you. I love listening to you. Enjoy your evening entertainment a little bit later tonight.
Thank you all.
All
Good
right.
night.
Then I'm
Take
going to
care.
move on. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Item 1.2 is a Department of Revenue Financial Management Review. The presenter is our ever popular Mr. Dwelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an easy one that I can just punt to two of our guests here this evening. But just by way of background, before I introduce them, the town, under the Board of Selectmen's guidance and leadership last year, undertook a financial management review through the Department of Revenue. These financial management reviews, which a lot of communities do, is really what I like to characterize it as a consulting engagement with the state. And so they come in and they'll analyze communities' internal financial operations and make recommendations around best practices and how communities can improve on a few things. And what's nice about these that I found is that they're not necessarily just focused on kind of your traditional internal financial operations, you know, as well as your financial solvency and liquidity. They touch upon many aspects that, you know, some wouldn't think are necessarily financially related, such as the town's overall organizational and operational structure, personnel and human resources, as well as IT. So before you this evening is the completed financial management review. And pleased to be joined this evening here by Marcia and Dan, the team who led this financial management review for the town. So what I thought I'd do is have them introduce themselves and then give you a quick overview of their work and some of the recommendations. And then I'd, you know, open it, I guess, back up to you, Mr. Chairman, if the board or any other folks have any questions for the team this evening.
Okay. So,
Marcia, you're on mute.
Marcia,
Mark, yeah.
hi, well, Marcia's on mute. My name is Dan Bertrand. I'm the Director of Administration, Policy, and Communication for DLS, and I am joined by my informed and experienced and intelligent colleague, Marcia.
The unmuted Marcia. What I was saying was, thank you, Chris. That was a very good introduction of how we got involved with Dover and what we do with our financial management reviews. We started this project back pre-COVID, so we were very fortunate to be able to come into the Dover Town Hall and meet with a lot of the senior staff, this members of the select board, all of the finance officers and their support staff. So we were able to get a well-rounded view of the organization, the structure, and the processes. As Chris said, we look at different areas, and our recommendations fell into four main areas: the overall structure, human resources, financial management operations, which is the daily operations, and then some financial planning. And I'd like to just highlight a couple of them, mostly in the structure. Our very first recommendation was for a charter. And in our review, the first thing we do is look at all of the founding documents. If there is a charter, the bylaws, job descriptions, any kind of procedural manuals and policies. And what we immediately found out of the gate was there's no charter. Your bylaws are very scant, to put it bluntly. There's not much there. Most of the offices and operations were being guided by job descriptions, which, as you know, can change as personnel changes, as Board of Selectmen change and somebody has a different idea. They're not very strong in a structural environment. Dover was very fortunate to have a very long-standing town administrator. Things worked very well. Hopefully Chris will be just as long-standing since he's joined. He's made a lot of progress. I'm amazed at how much he did in his first year, all the initiatives he's taken on and completed. So you have a good town manager or administrator, empower him. And with a charter, you can set out all of the roles and responsibilities and look at how the town is organized and how the boards and the committees are constituted and what they're supposed to do. With that, then accompanying the bylaws, and that gives the details. The charter and the bylaws work together. It's super important to have those details so everybody understands their roles and their responsibilities, the reporting relationships, and the deliverables. So that was the first part of the report. What really drove that too was looking at your budget process and all of the separate components that go into the budget. There's no comprehensive approach to it with the separately elected boards and the committees. What we like to see is the town administrator being fully responsible for that. And one of the ways to achieve that is giving him that power within at least the bylaws, but a charter would work well. But as I said, Dover was working very fine, many, many years, no issues, but you want to sustain that and going forward as times change, you want to have a little bit more solid foundation. Highlighting in the financial management operations, meeting with your treasurer collector, your town accountant, and their support staff. Our concern there, and again, you have huge free cash, things are progressing, but looking at some of the daily activities from an internal control point of view, without the reconciliations, without some of the tools, there's one of Chris's initiatives is for increased technology. The website is beautiful. There's so much information on it now. It's such a pleasure. But then in looking at the daily operations, all of the paper-driven systems, all of the the redundant data input, one of the recommendations is to do a workflow analysis of how are things being done. And in looking at doing things more efficiently, you will gain some internal control and you will have a better operation from a financial standpoint. Two of the ones that wanted to highlight was the revenue turnover, and I put actually a workflow in the appendix for you, just to give a little guidance in your payroll process. So, and then just the last thing to highlight is some financial planning. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion with the select board regarding stabilization funds, general stabilization and capital stabilization. And I chuckled a little bit when the representative was talking about the state's rainy day fund and how robust it was. And in this time of financial distress, they actually have some place to go and pull it. And that's the exact purpose of it. Dover has a very high level of free cash. And one of the reasons that it's high is every year you do not expend it, it rolls over and is recertified. What we recommend is putting a piece of that into stabilization. And that way, if you need it, say in July, something happens. You don't have free cash in July. You have to wait till it's certified again. But a stabilization fund, a town meeting, you can pull it right out and it makes it available. Planning for the future. So those are some of just the highlights. I hope you find that the report is useful, comprehensive, and will entertain any questions.
John?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you both. Marcia, Dan, thank you for first of all, the time and the commitment that you've put into this. Very thorough. The review of I've read it. I've spent quite a bit of time with it. The things that I am really very, very proud of are the number of things that we've started over the past couple of years that are mentioned in your recommendations. Some of the things that you highlighted just now are things that we began at least 3-4 years ago with our free cash group. There are members on the call this evening of that free cash committee that we formed a couple of years ago. It's probably going on 4 years now. So we have been very mindful of these things. And as you mentioned, it was always our intent to have in our financial planning and our financial preparedness, the ability to have a solid foundation, to use the words that you just you paraphrased, and to be financially independent. So in the event these times, as we're going through right now, did occur, we would be, as you said, very, very well prepared to address them. So thank you again. The things that I really, again, to reiterate, I'm very proud of, as you mentioned, things that we've initiated over the past couple of years, that the foundation, quite frankly, was laid well before Bob and I, and in some cases, Robin, by the selectmen and the people in Dover who have been doing this for a very long time. So thank you. Thank you for this.
Robin?
Okay.
Muted.
I thought the report was very well done. Unlike John, I can't even admit to reading it thoroughly once. I scanned it, and I do want to go back and spend a little more time with it. I very much appreciated the cheat sheet in the front, on the things that we should work on. It's remarkable how many of those things dovetail with what we identified as things that needed, in our opinion, to be done. So having an outside independent organization come in and validate what we thought needed to be done is a great position to be in. And I look forward to working with Chris and the Board of Selectmen and the rest of the team in slowly implementing the recommendations that have been outlined. I think the first step is to prioritize them because there are quite a few. But
Yes.
we're going to continue to move forward with the suggestions. And so I appreciate the report, and I will spend a little more time with it than I have.
One, if I may, what I didn't mention was the parallel work that it may be done now that the Collins Center is doing for your policies, which is an incredibly important component of municipal finance. So as you're looking at, especially the financial operations, to dovetail with those policies, and that will make it even stronger.
I forgot, everything is blurred. It seems as though it was years ago that we first started this review process.
Yes, it does feel that way.
So Marcy and Dan, thank you very much. As usual, Robin has stolen my thunder. What I had intended to say.
You can repeat yourself, Bob.
Yeah, so you say.
You haven't learned. You should go first. Then I would just have to say ditto.
No. That's not the way it's supposed to work. In any event, I did also read the report like John and thought it was well done. It was, again, getting clear, well analyzed work product is a joy. And cutting to the chase is greatly appreciated, when we all have a fair amount to do. For me, having, and I think Robin said this, the most important thing for me is to have an independent assessment of the various aspects of the town, because we have been running a certain way for a very long period of time. Since the 90s, a lot has changed from a technological point of view. A lot has been demanded in terms of information flows. So a lot has gone on. And Dover, despite having lots of good reputations, has been rather frugal in how it's invested in some of the town operations over time. So having somebody come in and take a look and give us their professional view is quite helpful. And like John and Robin and probably Chris, a lot of what you found sort of dovetails with a lot of what we thought, and several of our strategic goals for the town line up exactly with your recommendations. So it gives us great comfort, gives us a path going forward. But now the rubber must meet the road, and execution is always where at that point. So it's how do we move forward? What's the priorities? One of our goals was to do a review of boards, and one of our goals for the year was to review boards and committees, to take a top-down look at how we're organized. And I think that fits with one of the recommendations as well as the charter. We have the question we ask is, Dover 2020, does it work? And so we really wanted to get our hands a little dirty and take a really close look at our organization. So this is a great roadmap for us. Thank you all. Thank you both for that.
You're very welcome.
Any other comments? Seems like you're getting a pass, an easy one. So thank you very much for your work. Enjoy the holiday season. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are always available if there's any follow-up or additional information. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us for a resource for you. So.
I have no doubt that Robin and Chris, they're not bashful people.
Yes, the engagement does not end with the delivery of the report. So
very much so.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate that.
Great idea.
good night, all.
Good night.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we move on to.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, you may.
Folks jump on. Given that we're still on the topic, one of the things that I did want to bring to the board's attention this evening, since it was on the agenda, was a little bit of guidance. And this is, I think, a good segue from Bob, your comments about the board's strategic goals, specifically around, Dover 2020 organizational structure. Does it still work? And as I look at a lot of the recommendations that the state has provided, and as I reflect on, the past year and a half in town, a lot of questions and a lot of things that have come up from an opportunity standpoint seem to all center around this this concept of memorializing and understanding roles and responsibilities. And so one of the things I wanted, I think, to pose to the board this evening and to get your feedback and interest on that is having me move forward with soliciting quotes from consulting firms to assist the town with doing not a full comprehensive charter review top to bottom, but starting with a bylaw or charter review with the Board of Selectmen, right? And what the board's roles and responsibilities are. And the office is under the Board of Selectmen as a use case and a test case of that question about the town's operational and organizational structure, specifically related to the town's strategic goal in that area. So I thought that would be a good path forward, and have had some conversations with some folks about that. And I wanted to bring it up this evening to see if there was interest, and that would allow me to move forward and see if there's anyone out there who could help us with this work. I know that there are firms that are out there that do full scale top to bottom charter reviews that sometimes take multiple years because there's so much to it. But I thought maybe if we just pieced out just the board's area, that might be a good first step toward this goal. So appreciate you letting me speak a few minutes on it, Mr. Chairman, and that's what I got.
So Chris, if I understand you, you're proposing a pilot.
Yes.
Okay, John?
I think it would be a fabulous idea. If you think about just the things this year, Bob, Mr. Chair, that we've
I'm the same guy, it's there. Bob, you can call me Bob the chair or Bob the sofa. It's okay. I don't care.
Let's start with referring to Denise as Madam Vice Chair of Ways and Means. That sort of. So, COVID, engineering a town meeting, having E. coli in our drinking water, has spurred conversations that we have never had regarding the selectmen's ability to entertain, to adapt, or to interpret existing bylaws, or to create bylaws, and how to get ourselves around existing or navigate through the existing structure of the town meeting. So I think it is way overdue, and something that I would second right away.
Thank you, John. Robin?
I'm not sure I understand. I'm a little slow today. So we would be doing a pilot program to basically look at the role and responsibility first of the Board of Selectmen. Is that right? And then everything that falls under us? Okay. Is this something, I know we got a grant. Is this something that falls under that grant that we received from the Commonwealth?
So we've used, unfortunately, we've used one, and we will use the other. That was on the financial policies, and the other is the class and comp, which will be coming up soon. But that being said, Robin, that's a great point. I don't know where the community compact funds are at right now. They might have some left over, but I would look for grant funding to undertake this effort.
So I mean, being the longest sitting selectman, I think it would be a good idea. I was never quite sure of my role, so I just went with the flow. So hopefully I'm doing it right. But all honesty, I do think it is something that is worthwhile because it is always a struggle understanding, um, you know, what the role is, because I think there is some misunderstanding of exactly what our responsibilities are. So I definitely support that. And if we can get a grant, I support it even more.
Chris, do you need more?
No, that's it. I appreciate that. So I'll take some time to draft up a scope and share it with the board for feedback, and we'll go from there. So appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so 1.3 is Department of Public Works reorganization, assessment, and potential vote. I'm assuming that that's on your agenda, Mr. Dwelly.
Yes, sir. So in speaking of community goals, the operational structure of departments has been one for as long as I've been in town. And we went through an effort last year to memorialize informally the grounds crew, you know, under a public works department. It was kind of our first pilot to get toward it. And we got very close. And with Craig's well-deserved, but unfortunate for us, retirement, I thought it would be a good time for us to engage a consultant to come in and to do an assessment of the town's public works related operational functions and make recommendations on, is this set up great and is it perfect now and well into the future, or are there is there some reorganization opportunity within that entity to be had? So I went out and I solicited quotes, and before you this evening is a response from Community Paradigm, run by Bernie Lynch. He's a well-known municipal consultant in the Commonwealth and has recently done this exact work right next door in Needham as well as in Millis. So I'm seeking the board's approval this evening to allow me to enter into a contract with him so that he can evaluate the town's public works related functions and provide the town with some short and long-term recommendations on how best we can organize that operation for both improved and consistent customer service, but as well as operational efficiency as well, and potential monetary savings.
John?
Mr. Chair, Chris, if that's a document you've presented, I apologize. I can't see on my screen, but maybe we could just do it verbally. Is there a scope of dollars that you had in mind, or time? Is it a contract that would be a consulting contract with a time maximum or a dollar maximum, and what would that be?
Yep. So he has quoted us at 14.
16?
I'm bringing it up right. $16,000. Yep. $16,000 to do the work. I'll quickly run through. So the scope of work is to interview town officials, to gather and understand general policy issues, the operations of each department, assess operational strengths and improvement opportunities, as well as management practices, conduct a comparative survey of similar communities in Massachusetts for benchmarking purposes, review and evaluate the management system, and then prepare a written report and recommendations to the community. So that's just a high level overview of the scope that he's provided. So again, that's at a cost of $16,000, and it will be completed within 15 weeks.
Well, just going from memory, Chris, that the wording that you just ran through, that dovetails with 3 or maybe 4 of the different segments that are the consultants of the financial consultants just presented to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it makes a lot of sense to do this now, you know, with Craig's retirement. It's a good opportunity to look at, you know, how that department functions and what are the other departments that function with it, and maybe memorializing some of those side arrangements that have existed for many, many years. And then I think it will also help us get the right person to fill the position that we're trying to fill, because we'll understand better what the role is.
Agreed.
Point.
Okay, so I move to approve the proposal from Community Paradigm Associate Consulting Services related to the Department of Public Works assessment. I move to authorize the town administrator to execute documents related to the Department of Public Works assessment.
Seconded, John Jeffries.
All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Okay.
And did you
Item 1.4.
notice the newest consultant that's part of the CPA team, Carl Valente? Did you notice that for the profiles?
Yeah, he does. Carl has done some work with Bernie. Carl will not be.
Right, I saw that.
Public
It's
Works,
Bernie.
That's double dipping. He's helping on the financial side.
Oh, I mean, we
Good to see him yesterday.
right. I mean, we all met Bernie. You know, he was one of the firms that came in for our town administrator search, and
Right.
you know, both he and I think Sharon Flaherty came in with him. They were very impressive, and you know, the firm has really done a lot of really good work for other communities in the area. So.
And I did speak to the communities that I mentioned that they worked with, and both the managers in those communities said that it was an excellent engagement, and it was a great final product and helped them with what they needed.
Yeah. I just want to echo what Robin said, Chris, about Bernie, that in the process when we interviewed Bernie, the reason that we segued to the Collins Center was the time element that we were up against during that year, where there were so many moving parts that we had to address, that to utilize the Collins Center, what made just made the whole process reduce by about 6 or 7 months, about at least at that time. Was that about right, Bob? It was October when we decided that we would utilize the Collins Center. We actually
certainly in that time frame, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to Board of Selectmen updates. Mrs. Hunter.
I have been interviewing individuals for my water resource task force. You know, that's a mouthful, but then I was thinking of acronyms and some of them just weren't appropriate.
Well, how about
initials?
Word?
I don't know, I'm gonna have to come up with a different name, but and it's been going well. There's, you know, I would love to get some additional volunteers that I could interview with. But right now I appear to have a solid core team. So what I would like to propose is to bring forward, and I'll put a blurb up on those members that I think have good skill sets to get started on the Water Resource Task Force, and start with a smaller than 7-member group. Yeah. And then as we get a better idea of exactly what the mission of this group is, go out again and try to get additional volunteers that would like to join the group. You know, the issue I'm facing is COVID has actually made things in some ways more stressful for families, especially younger families, and it makes it more difficult for people to commit. You know, I found that everybody really liked the aspect of the meetings being virtual, but it's just hard to commit with so many unknowns. So I would just like to, get started, because I think there's a lot of work for us. There's a lot of information for us to read and to organize, and, the smaller group can start doing that.
So Robin, so I'm assuming that you got a response when you posted the request on the website.
Right, but not as big a response. I was expecting to get more people. I have gotten, I was very excited because of a person that just purchased a house in Dover was looking at the website and contacted me. And this individual has a skill set that dovetails extremely well with what we're trying to do. So he's going to be a great resource. And, he's very excited to get involved in the community. And I was hoping, there would be some more individuals that would want to be a part of this, because it is important and it is a strategic, it's important for us as a town to look at and have a strategy. And as I mentioned last time, I've also reached out to individuals that are outside of my age group, to try and bring in, a different demographic, because this is important to the future of Dover.
Yeah, it's
And I
critical,
would love
Robin,
to
critical.
get- So I'm still trying, which is why I talked a little bit to Chris about trying to, did it make sense to just start this with a smaller group so that we don't lose any more time, because it's just going to be a little more difficult than I had thought to get, the whole committee appointed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have at least a number to start. I mean, that's pretty good. I'll take that.
Right. And there is a lot of information. I mentioned to you that Tom Crowley had
Yep.
contacted me because he was on a water study committee 25 years ago, and he dropped off at my house a stack of paper, that's worth going through. It's worth understanding what that committee had done and build on it.
When I see Tom, he usually has his cane and he's beating me when I'm doing my walk. So I have a different experience with Tom.
Well, Tom doesn't like everything I have to say, and he's been vocal about it, and I'm okay with that. But I was very, it was great that he, when he learned about the committee, he went through his files and he actually had some good information. And,
Yeah.
told me who else was on that committee, and suggested that I reach out to those individuals as well to see if they have historic files, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that parallels. I mean, it was just a terrific amount of information that we had a year ago when we were looking at the Carroll. And we looked at all the work of the older committees. It was invaluable. So,
Right. And,
yeah.
and we really need to start on that. And not only that, the Water Resource Committee, thanks to Jerry Clark, he has put together a Google Drive with a lot of really good information as well. And there's no reason to recreate the wheel.
Right.
The Water Task Force has done some really important work, and they continue to do important work that, this Water Resource Task Force needs to, bring in under our fold and understand how these different silos are going to work together.
Yeah. Okay. That raises a question that I was asked. It reminds me of a question I was asked today. Chris, this is have we completed the renegotiation with the Colonial contract?
Not officially.
Okay, is that something that was supposed to be done by the end of the month?
Yes.
Okay, that's a process, that's a thing in work then.
I had a
Russell?
Our last call was with Colonial Water Company this week, and my sense is we're getting to a close relatively soon, so the full board should be seeing something.
Okay, all right. So in terms of other updates, Chris, I'm going to just name a couple of different things that I have on the list, and I'm going to assume that you'll pick it up or when you provide the update as well. And so the thing that we project that we kicked off more recently was the planning group for town meeting, May 2021. And we have 4 or 5 people, representing different parts of the town getting together. We'll start getting together after November elections to think through how we can have a good town meeting in May. Water Resource Task Force, Robin, you covered. The other thing I will just comment on is the Carroll Building Committee. A number of the members of the committee, as well as myself, took a look at Whiting Road today. With the idea that Whiting Road would possibly provide long-term storage that is currently being done at Carroll. And people were pretty impressed with the building. I didn't know really its history. It has a pretty interesting history, and people kind of thought it's quite viable. So that's the only update I have on Carroll, on the Carroll Building Committee. And I know Chris is going to talk about November elections. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that there's been a tremendous amount of work done by our town clerk and a lot of volunteers to begin the process of early elections, voting rather. And the hours of operation for early voting is on the website. And a big thank you for all those folks who are giving many hours to making sure that people in Dover have a smooth, easy path to vote for the elections coming up next month. So that's kind of it for me. We're going to move on to any comments on the upcoming agendas. The only thing I would ask for, and I don't have it right up in front of me right now, but I would ask that for one of the meetings in November, we get Colonial to tell us what's going on with the Log 4 water treatment installation. And I would like them to also provide an update on how people are responding to the drought. They gave a very upbeat report back, I think, in August. I wouldn't mind hearing from them again. And again, I'm happy to take a report or have someone attend one of the meetings. I can personally vouch for the fact that the Log 4 system is being worked on because a truck pulled up on Francis Street with lots of long pipes and tubes. And then that was yesterday. And then another truck showed up today. So there's active work going on. The pipes are laid out on their access road, and I think the update that I personally got in my bill from Colonial Water said that they expect the work to be done around Thanksgiving. But I wouldn't mind hearing from the company itself.
And if I remember, that's what they had said when they came and gave us the last update, that their ETA for completion was Thanksgiving.
Yep. So they seem to be on schedule. But I really would like to hear about the Dover, whether or not the water restrictions reduce use, to see if we continue to conserve water. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know, Carol is on and they've been doing a lot of work, a lot of outreach. So if you don't mind, Bob, maybe she could tell you a little bit, because there are signs all over Dover. And it's much more visible. I think people are more cognizant of the fact that we have a drought now than they were 2 years ago. So Carol, have you gotten any feedback from all of the you're on mute.
Yeah, Carol, you can't, we can't hear you when you're on mute. Still on mute. There you go.
There you go. I didn't want my crying grandson in the background. So anyway, I haven't personally, I don't know if the Board of Health has, and I'll check and get that information back to you. We did put out, with the help of the Highway Department, both yellow and red signs, starting in August, early September. So they're still up. And I know that there are a couple of A-frame signs that are around town that Colonial Water put up.
Right.
I haven't seen too many of them, but there are a few of them. The DEP announced again today that we are still in a level 3 drought, and in Norfolk County, the Southeast region, which is what we are. And I think we will need to, this Water Study Committee and Board of Health will need to get out a more simple announcement of that to remind folks that even though we've had almost 3.5 inches of rain in October, at least according to my gauge, we are still in a drought.
Yes.
And we're still in a very serious drought. So I think we need to get that communication out through the various social media channels. And I've actually emailed Jerry and asked him if he'd like me to put together a very short and succinct announcement, in which case I'd get it over to Kate to put onto the website and so forth as well, and do a push announcement. We are working on a Water Conservation 101 document with a bunch of FAQs that will help to start the education process for the citizens of Dover, which was one of the recommendations from the Kleinfelder report. We hope to have that ready to go onto the website by the end of the year. But thank you, Robin.
Yeah, thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Item 1.5, Town Administrator update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things for the board this evening. The first is on COVID-19. So the town's COVID-19 task force meets tomorrow morning. 3 key things on the agenda that I'll quickly cover for you. One is myself and Dr. Kay Peterson, as the town's Board of Health representative, continue to dialogue with Boston College regarding their intended use of the Connors Center. And it's really just to keep lines of communication open. Happy to report that they shared with us today that they've had the lowest positive test rate since the beginning of the school year this past week. So, good. They are doing better than others throughout, certainly throughout Massachusetts. So I just wanted to share that dialogue remains strong, which is a good thing. The other is on Halloween. Through our interactive COVID-19 dashboard that the Board of Health worked on, there's some Halloween best practices there. And I think we're going to bring those to, we'll send out a reminder via social media and on the website. That's just really about just best practice tips as people are, out trick-or-treating, common sense things that are usually that have been followed regularly since this started. And the other is on the CARES Act, specifically as it relates to air quality. So I talked a little bit about this earlier, but Carl Warnick, who I think is on the call this evening on the 508 number, along with Burrow Happold, the town's air quality consultant, have been doing a lot of work, specifically over the past 2 weeks, to prioritize and really identify what the key recommendations are for the community's buildings, specifically the library, the townhouse, and the Carroll Community Center, as it relates to some remediation efforts that we can implement and incorporate in those buildings. And with the CARES funds available and with HVAC improvements being eligible, we certainly want to take advantage of that. So that'll be a discussion point with the group tomorrow. Switching gears, the chairman spoke on the Carroll Community Center, and just a reminder for folks, they'll meet on Monday evening is their next meeting. The Hill Task Force met last night, had a good conversation about finalizing a scope of services and a scope of work for appraisal services for the Hill property. That was a task force recommendation in the spring before we got sidelined because of COVID, was to get a sense of what the actual value of the property is before we start to determine potential uses and even a dialogue about, is this really a feasible or a tangible project that we should be pursuing. And then the second to last piece I have on the IT front. So the finance team under Dave's leadership has conducted an assessment of an evaluation of time and attendance software providers. So that was one of the things that we heard in the DOR report this evening. It's one of the things that, was certainly a little eye-opening when I arrived, just the paper-based process on the town's time and attendance, and just an opportunity for an improvement there. So that team has vetted some software vendors and providers so that we can move that over to an electronic process to reduce paper and ultimately save staff time, because it's incredibly cumbersome, the number of hands that touch just signing off on payroll each week. I know that Dave is now working with the tab on a couple of things related to that front, but I wanted to highlight that. And then the last item I have is on the election front. So the only thing that I'd add in addition to the chairman's statement is in speaking with the town clerk, things have been going exceptionally well from an operational standpoint. I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone when I say that's no doubt with Felicia and her leadership as the town clerk.
At the helm, Chris.
So she indicated to me earlier this week that approximately 2,200 ballots were mailed out, and that earlier in the week there were about 300 walk-ins for early voting so far. So that is quite a remarkable turnout at this early stage in early voting. The protocols that she's put in place regarding safety for those who wish to be on site is wonderful. There's signs and instructions posted on the door about how to enter, how to space yourself. And the town's poll workers have been doing a great job of maintaining social distancing while checking people in. And, someone being in the building, I hardly even notice that there's an election going on, just given the great work that they've done to be able to fit everything in the building. And the only other piece that I'd add is that I won't go through the extensive, or I won't go through the early voting schedule, but as the chairman mentioned, all the dates and times are outlined on the town's website and are shared on the town's social media. So that's all I have for the board this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to, Dave, do you want to update the board on the email policy that was discussed at the tab this week?
Yes, I can speak to that at a high level. So we looked at the number of emails that have been issued and that weren't being used, and used that as kind of the precipice to kick off a little bit of a study and look to see who was issued a town email, who's using it, and how we should proceed going forward. And from that, I think the discussion went back and forth between town employees and in conjunction with regulatory boards. And then I think some more discussions came about, and Bob brought up a good point about, Mr. Chairman brought up a good point about elected boards as well as our regulatory boards. So went back, made that amendment. So going forward, what was voted on as a suggestion or policy going forward from the tab would be to have elected boards issued town email addresses, which would be their first initial, last name at doverma.org. And we would also put into that, once you're issued a town email address, that you must conduct town business with that email address. For secondary boards that are not issued, there's some guidance on that as well. We suggest that you use Gmail or some other free email system out there and use your first name, last name, and then the board that you're on. So I think we'll write that up and bring that to be voted on as well.
Thank you, Dave. John, I skipped over you. Do you have any comments to make on Hale?
Chris covered most of them, Mr. Chair. And the only thing that I would add to that is we had a lively discussion with regards to the scope of the RFP, the scope of the work that Chris is going to send requests for requests for quotes of. Is that correct? Did I get that in the proper sequence, Chris?
Perfect.
And Mr. Chair, can I cover one other item that we really should give a little bit of time to this evening?
Sure, go ahead.
That would be what a fabulous job Mona Tina Turner DeShillo did.
I hope somebody has that on video, John.
Someone does have that on video, Bob, and thank you very much.
I have it on video. I have it to all the people that, for those of you that I'm referring to, Craig's celebration of his retirement yesterday. Mona, I know there were a lot of people involved in putting this together, and to Chris, to everybody who made remarks, and to everybody who had a hand in putting that together. It was very, very, very well done. And Mona, you will be memorialized.
Well, thank you.
Extraordinarily well done, Mona. Really, really was done. And to Craig, from all of us, just we all said it yesterday, but thank you.
Absolutely true. Thanks all. So unless there is, yep, you have one?
I'm sorry, could I just build on that just because
Sure.
we've got Bonnie and Carol and Rob with us. I just want to highlight on the upcoming Board of Selectmen agenda on November 5th, there'll be a Zoom recognition and celebration for Craig. So we'll be emailing committees tomorrow to invite them to that. And it's difficult to be able to do a community-wide event, certainly during the times of pandemic, but the board wanted to be able to do something digitally and remotely. And since Zoom is now the platform, that'll be it on the 5th. So that invite will be going out tomorrow to boards and committees. So just be on the lookout for that.
So will Mona's performance be included in the video presentation on the 5th?
Technically we could replay it.
I'll tell you, we have the musical technology, to take Mona. We could, I'm sure in my son's recording studio, we could take that track and we could overlay or underlay or whatever the great terminology is. We could overlay Mona on top of Tina Turner, and we could make. But mostly, I want to hear Bobby Tosi again in his solo.
Yeah, my own thought was the chorus was certainly willing, but they might have been able to use a rehearsal or two. I don't know. All right. Assuming that is a really good way to end the meeting. Thank you all for participating. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we not have a consent agenda? Because I
We
know
do
there were
not.
a couple of, no.
I don't have one. I don't know.
All right.
Next time there will be one.
Okay, thanks.
You thought I missed it?
Yeah, I was just checking up on you, Bob. I want you to know I was paying attention.
What I miss is Rio running around.
He's very upset. He's looking for dinner.
Yeah, so am I. All right, folks. What did I say? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes, we do. All in favor? Aye, Bob Springer.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Thank you. Have a great night. Enjoy the
All right,
weekend.
thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See you later.